Today, we are going to talk about the single most important skill to focus on if you work with children with autism. So, if you have a child with autism, if you know someone who has a child with autism, if you work with children with autism, or you know someone who works with children with autism, make sure to share this episode with them. This is the most important skill to work on. If you work on this skill, you will have a cascading impact in which you will improve every aspect of the child with autism's life. And yet, the skill we're going to talk about today is rarely ever talked about. So, unfortunately, the most important skill to develop in intervention is hardly ever talked about. And we're going to talk about it today. And I'm going to leave you with 6 tips to put in your intervention practice today to improve outcomes. So, what am I talking about? I am talking about attention. Attention is everything. So, if you're working with children with autism, you are going to want to improve attention not only early on when you first start working with a child with autism, but in every step of the intervention process. And that's because children with autism struggle with attention on many levels. So it's not just sustaining attention. First of all, it's first obtaining their attention. Secondly, they have difficulty shifting their attention. Thirdly, they have difficulty focusing their attention and ignoring distracting stimuli. And lastly, they have difficulty sustaining the attention for a longer duration. So, attention, 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 attention. There are many attention challenges for children with autism. And a lot of this is due to, in part, sensory challenges. So, when your senses are challenged, your senses keep you safe. When you're sensory challenged, it's hard to think of higher level engagement skills such as language, such as play, such as reading, such as interacting with other individuals and socializing because you are in a fight, flight, freeze, fawn, survival state. So, when these children's sensory systems are challenged, which keeps them safe, makes it very difficult to attend. And as I spoke about before, it's not just one type of attention. We're talking about every type of attention that is impacted for these children with autism. So, I'm going to share with you today what you can do in therapy right now to improve attention. Now, you might have noticed this with children with autism that you worked with. There's inconsistency often. So, on Tuesday, I'll work with a girl, for instance, and her attention is wonderful. She's talking so much. She's interacting and she's engaging in play with me the whole 15-minute session. And then I'll see her on Thursday. And on Thursday, she's not talking. She's not giving me eye contact. She's not interacting. She's highly distracted. I'm not working with a different girl here. The girl is the same. The girl has great abilities. The girl has great potential. The girl is capable of a lot. The inconsistency is due to her attention. On Tuesday, I had her attention. And when I had her attention, she was following directions. She was engaging in the activity. She was engaging with me. She was talking. She was engaging in play. She was commenting. On Thursday, she was looking out the window. She was distracted. I did not have her attention. When I didn't have her attention, I wasn't going anywhere. And you're not going to go anywhere either if you don't have the child's attention. It's that important. It's a game changer, not for a single session, it's a game changer for life. And when these children have that attention within these windows of time, when the neuroplasticity in the brain is at the highest level, when they are attending, great things are going to happen developmentally across every domain of development. Attention matters. Attention is everything. So we're going to talk about now what can we do to improve attention? Because if the child doesn't have attention, you're not going to have that social interaction of joint attention. Now, joint attention is where the child is interacting with you in an activity or with you conjointly with an object. That's joint attention. Now, joint attention we know is a golden apple. If the child with autism has joint attention, where they're shifting their attention between you and an object or you and an activity, the prognosis is very good for later outcomes is into elementary school and into adulthood. So it's very important, but you can't have joint attention, which we talk so much about, if you don't have attention. So, unfortunately, I think in the field of speech pathology and a lot of autism intervention fields, they overlook attention. They assume that attention is already present and they get to the learning and they get into the symbols and they get into the play and they get into the joint attention and the interaction. However, if the attention isn't present, then you don't have a foundation for which learning and social interaction and motor skill development and play and all of these other wonderful things can develop. So let's get back to the basics and let's talk about attention. And what I'm going to talk about today is what you're going to focus on in every single stage of intervention. So I'm going to leave you with 6 tips today. These are tips from my upcoming book. It's coming out soon, I promise. I know it's a little bit delayed because life's been really busy lately, but it's 32 lessons that create lifelong change in autism intervention. So these 32 lessons, each of them will take you less than 5 minutes to get through. This book is so digestible. I just want you to know this is what you need to know. This is what you need to do. You can take it in under 5 minutes. These are the game changers. Go on and do what you do best and change lives. That's my goal in the book. So where I'm at in this book that's coming out very soon, I promise you, is I'm at the reading stage. I've written the book and I have to read it aloud, not once, but a few times. And I have to make sure that every single word in that book is coming not only from an evidence research base, which that I've got down, but it's coming from my heart and it's coming from my mind and it's coming from my experience in my hands. So every word that I write is true to you, and then it's true in my work, it's true in my heart, and it's true in my knowledge base as a researcher. So that comes out when I read it aloud and when I hear those words, and I'm like, is this the truth? Is this what I know from 20 years of being a researcher, from 20 years of having being in the ring with my arm, with my sleeves rolled up? Is this true from my heart and what I know to be right and what feels wrong? And that really, really matters. Your intuition in what is speaking from your higher source of this is what people need to hear, and this is what's going to change lives. So I'm reading it aloud again and again and again before I send it your way, but it's coming your way very soon. Let's get on to the book, the 6 tips. So the 6 tips this is from lesson 14 of my 32 books. And lesson 14 is titled Attention is Everything. And the first tip is to minimize distractions, environmental distractions. So if you've ever seen the play The Nutcracker and the opening sequence, I'm very overwhelmed by it, actually. You have some people talking and drinking, you have some people dancing, you have people eating, you have children playing, you have everything going on in this holiday party all at once. And that is the last thing you want to do as far as your environment is concerned. So when children enter your therapy room, in my room, as you'll see on the videos, like on Instagram, you see pictures, I have sheets covering all of the shelves so they don't see all of the toys everywhere and they're not distracted. I want them to only see the spotlight on the activity at hand and on me, their communication partner, so they can focus their attention. because the distractibility, what we know about children with autism is they take in all of the stimuli and they don't they don't discriminate of this doesn't matter, this does matter, pay attention to this, ignore that. So we have to help them with that by taking all of that background noise in terms of the auditory and the visual stimulation, hide it. And you just want the spotlight to be on you and your activities. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, I want you to get away from the table and chairs and working at the table and chairs. When I first started out, I thought I was working with very children with severe level of impairment. I would do naturalistic activities at a table and chair. And the reason for that is I thought the structure would help them attend better. However, they can't sit at a table and chair that long. They really can't. We know that typical preschoolers every 5 minutes need to move to have optimal engagement. Now, our preschoolers have poor attention skills, so they're going to even need to move more than that. So move away from the table and chairs. Get into the task-oriented movement activities. Get into my SIS membership. I'll send the props and it'll be 100% done for you every week so you can focus on the interaction and on the intervention where the magic is going to occur in the moment-to-moment basis. So get away from the table and chairs and get into task-oriented movement activities instead. Now, another thing I want you to know about task-oriented movement activities, they're very different than just movement. They're not just movement. They're much more effective. There is purpose behind it. There's a goal for them to accomplish. So a lot of my activities, they get to put something in a box at the end, or they get to stick something on a wall. And that for children with autism is highly rewarding. So if you've ever been into a teach classroom, for instance, you see the teach task, they get to stick something on a picture and match it. They get to throw it in the box at the end. I capitalize on that and I integrate that strength into the task-oriented movement activities because I'm asking them to do something very hard, which is the complex movement activities. I'm going to take something that's a strength that they enjoy, which is the pictures and matching pictures on the wall or throwing something in a box. And I'm going to integrate that into the activity because I'm going to be challenging with the complex movements that I ask in the activity. So get away from the tables and chairs is number 2. And don't just do movement, do task-oriented movement activities, which is much more effective than the sensory integration task or just movement or aerobic activity in general. Number 3, I want you to initially pick up your pace and shorten your task. So sometimes I work with children with autism on day 1, and I will literally have 10 different activities for them to engage in. So these are the highest interest activities. And what I do is I change the activity before the child loses interest. I read their body cues. I'm like, okay, the child's starting to look away. All right. And I move at a quick pace to keep their attention. So I'm kind of like SpongeBob SquarePants, if you know who he is, or Jack in the Box. I'm moving fast and furious at a quick pace to be like, look at me, 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 or Dora the Explorer. And I'm also changing the activity before the child loses interest. So at the end of the time, it's been 15 minutes. I may have gone through 10 minutes, 10 different activities, but I sustained their attention the whole entire time. Now, over time, we're going to slow it down, and over time, the activities are going to get longer. So, by the end of the school year, this child that I'm doing 10 different activities with on day 1, I'm doing one activity with them, just one, and I'm doing it for the whole entire 15-minute period. But that's because every single session, I'm focusing on attention. The 4th tip is follow a consistent routine every session so that the child's not spending their time and their efforts trying to figure out what they're supposed to do next, what's expected of them, that's going to take their attention away. If the child knows, okay, this is the routine, this is the beginning, this is the middle, and this is how we end, and we do this way every single time, then they're going to be able to focus on you. Then they're going to be able to focus on the activity at hand and the new learning. So keep the same routine consistent in your therapy sessions. What's the first thing they do when they come into the door? Then what is the expectation? Then what do they do next? Now, every week we're changing the theme, every week we're changing the activity. So diversity is the spice of neuronal life. But we're keeping the routine the same. Another reason this is so important is because we want these children to feel safe. And in order for them to feel safe, there has to be consistency in what's expected and what's not acceptable behavior. There has to be consistency. And this is the routine we do in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. So, for instance, every day when the children come in my routine, they always first pick which movement activity they want to do out of the two. There's two signs once they come in the door. Then they go and they sit down. Then we get right into it. Then at the end of the routine, we always sing a song. It's always the same song. And the song goes like this. Whatever the child's name is, I'll make up a name. Carol worked hard today. Carol worked hard today. And then, hi ho, the dairy. She worked so hard today. And I'll write her name. There was a girl who worked so hard. So, for instance, at the end of the routine, I might sing their name I sing. All right. So, for instance, every single session that I'm working with a child, I end the routine singing this song. There was a girl who worked so hard, and Carol was her name. Oh, Carol, Carol, and Carol was her name. Now, it's really engaging to the children because many of my children love letters. So they're loving the letters and they're loving the song, and it's always the same. And at the end of the school year, they're singing the song all by themselves because of repetition. So, what I'm encouraging you to do is have that routine day in and day out, or every therapy session that never changes. You're going to change the language, you're going to change the activity, you're going to change the experience. There will be diversity, which is important because diversity is the spice of neuronal life. What's different creates change. However, you're going to keep the routine the same. I learned this from all of the work I've done in researching what is good for children who've experienced trauma. Because many of our children with autism, because their sensory systems are disturbed, they're in a fight, flight, constant survival state, much like the children that have experienced trauma. And what we want to do is get them in a state in which they feel safe and secure. When they feel safe and secure, then we're able to take that light switch and switch it away from the survival brain to the higher level thinking brain, the brain that's going to learn language, interact in social interaction, and play and creative expression. So, follow a consistent routine. That's tip number 4. Number 5, stand out from the distractions by exaggerating your vocal inflection, your gestures, and your cues. So, that doesn't mean being louder, it means being different. So, you could be whispering things. There's a lot of different ways to stand out. You can do things with pauses. You can do an animated facial expression and wait. So you're being a jack in the box and that you're standing out like, pop, look at me. But it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. You can do that in a way that is quiet and understated as well. Once again, repetition is your friend. You can have these repeated sequences that you do every time so that they get excited because they know what's going to come next to gather their attention. So, for instance, instead of ready, set, go, I don't like to use that so much because then the children will use it for every action. Instead, I like to use look, At, and I like to use look at instead. And I do it the same way every single time. I use the same gestures every single time. The children get all excited because they can't wait for me to sneeze my box to them when I say look, after I say look at. All right, let's look at the next tip. We're going to look at number 6, our final tip. Seeing the children through the activities. So, a lot of our children, as we mentioned before, have difficulties sustaining attention. And when we're doing task oriented movement activities, you have 5 or 6 steps for the children to go through. And you don't want to lose the children because they become distracted and then they walk off the obstacle course. So, for instance, if we have farm animals, I can do the Hi Ho the Dario song because the children like that. And I can say, "Hi ho the dairy-o, we're saving the animals." And then I can say, for instance, "We're picking them out of the box. We're picking them out of the box. Hi ho the dairy-o, we're picking them out of the box. We're crossing the bridge. We're crossing the bridge. Hi ho the dairy-o, we're crossing the bridge. We're throwing them in the barn. We're throwing them in the barn. Hi ho the dairy-o, we're throwing them in the barn. We're checking the checklist, checking the checklist. Hi ho the dairy-o, we're checking the checklist. We're saving the animals, saving the animals." And you can say the child's the name here. Carol is saving the animals. All right, so those are 6 tips I want you to try. Put them in practice today. Do them every day. This is not a, okay, we're going to focus on attention this week. Check. Next week, we're going to focus on a different skill. Attention is going to be a focus every single session. Just to give you an idea of the role attention plays, I have a child right now that has attentional challenges. And when I saw this child on Tuesday, this child was joint attention, talking up a storm. I know you've had children like this, engaged in the activity throughout the whole 15 minutes, making tons of comments here and there. Now, that was on Tuesday. When I saw the child on Thursday last week, the child was looking out the window. The child was looking at the lit lights on the ceiling. The child was highly distracted. I could not get her attention. Now, when you can't get the child's attention, you're not going anywhere. But is it the same child? Yes. Does the child have the same ability, the same capacity to perform? This child's skill level did not change. This child is capable of great skills. But what you're going to see is if you don't have attention, you're not going to see any of those higher level skills happen. You're not going to have joint attention if you don't have attention. A joint attention is where the child's engaging with you and an object or an activity. Now, that's not going to be happening. That's more complex than attention. That requires attention and shifting attention. Very hard. If you don't have attention, you're not going to have that. If you don't have attention, you're not going to have the child following directions. If you don't have attention, you're not going to have the child engaging in complex motor skills. If you don't have attention, you're not going to have play. If you don't have attention, so do you see where I'm coming from this? You're not going to have language. You're not going to have speech. You're not going to have these higher level skills. Attention is everything. Attention needs to be embedded in everything you do in your intervention room and how it's designed. Think about attention. When it comes to the activity, task oriented movement activities, think about attention. When it comes to your cueing, you are going to have to stand out amid a sea of distraction. Think about you have the nutcracker play going on and everything ever going around. You need to be in the spotlight. You need to stand out with all of that. You need to think about attention when it comes to your cueing. Think about attention. You don't have to be louder and bigger and obnoxious. You can be quieter. You can make it longer. You can make it softer. You can use pauses. You can use repetition in which you do the same thing every time to get them involved in what you're going to do. But you need to stand out in a sea of distraction. So when you're thinking about that, think about how you're going to integrate song to help them transition from one step to the next, or transition from one room to the next, or transition from a preferred activity to a non-preferred. Think about how you're going to use song so that you don't lose the child and that you can keep the child engaged in the activity when they're going from one step to the next, and that they don't wander off instead or lie down on the ground instead. So I want you to take all of these tips. I want you, if you haven't yet, check out kellyvest.com/sis, the sis membership, in which I give you all the props. You just have to do the magic. That's what you're going to have to do. Give that a try and make sure to join before Fridays, because on Fridays, I send out the next week's activities. So if you miss it, then you have to wait till the next Friday. I'm not sending out activities to you in the middle of the week. So make sure to join before Friday. Join today. Don't delay. And this Friday, I am going to be sharing my complex affricate paragraph. It is awesome. The kids are loving it. And I haven't shared this with anyone else. It's just for my sis members. So don't miss that. Make sure to join before Friday if you want to get that paragraph. So I want you to take all of this information, roll up your sleeves. You know what you do. You do this each and every day. Make the world a better place, one child at a time. You're always first.